News moves pretty fast, and if you don't stop and look around, you might miss it. That's why the Daily Note slows down the news. No jerseys, no masters, just better questions about America. This is the Daily Note with James A. Brown.
Ladies and gentlemen, children of all ages, boys and girls, hello. Welcome to Daily Note Live. I'm James A. Brown. We are on air and online from sea to shining sea. And you could be anywhere in the world, but you're here with me. And I thank you for that sincerely. You can check out my work at jamesabrown.net. That's jamesabrown.net. We've got a great show for you today, and it all starts with our top line.
The top line.
53%. That's the number. Now, I've been reading this pile of data from the good folks at Pew Research. And it's left me with so much to discuss with you in the coming weeks and months, maybe years to come. The biggest questions from that pile are in our top line. Are we surrounded by bad people? No, I'm not kidding. I mean it. It's a real question. When I say bad people, I mean morally bad people. Is that true? And if it is, how do we know that? Especially in an era where we are increasingly alone in our spaces. We don't know our neighbors' names. And if we're wrong, why did we tell researchers this? How do we come to that conclusion? I'll walk you through what Pew found over the course of this hour. So here's what happened. Pew Research released this massive survey. More than 30,000 people in 25 countries. Countries on every continent, rich countries and poor countries, democracies and not quite democracies. And they asked everyone the same basic question. Do the people in your country have good morals or bad morals? Not the government or the politicians or the celebrities, the people, your people, the people we see every day. And in 24 of those 25 countries, the answer was the same. More people said more good than bad. And it wasn't really close. In Canada, 92% said their fellow Canadians are morally good. 92%. In Indonesia, the same number, roughly. In Mexico, it's about 80%. In the United Kingdom, it was 82%. In Germany, it was in the 70s. Even in Israel. You know, they've got reasons to be angry at each other there. Lots of reasons. It was 68%. And then there was us. 53% of American adults told Pew researchers that their fellow Americans have bad morals. Bad morals. And bad ethics. Not 50-50, not a slim plurality. A majority of us don't think that our neighbors have good ethics. We were the only country out of 25 in this study to say that. Now, I want to be specific about what Pew asked here because the wording matters in any poll. They asked whether people in this country have good morals and ethics or bad ones. That's a character judgment, not do you disagree with these people, because plenty of us disagree with each other. Not do you vote differently than your neighbors, because many of us do that. Are they bad? Do they have a bad moral framework? And I want you to think about what that means for a second, because it doesn't mean that 53% of Americans say, I have bad morals. No one said that about themselves. No one's talking about them. They said the people around them have bad morals. They say that your neighbor, you are saying, I am saying that your neighbor does. That the person in front of us at the grocery store does. The person behind them. The person at the next register. Every other person in every car you passed. We looked around the country and we decided, yep, I don't trust them. Most of these people have bad morals. So we're the only country on earth, at least in this study, I'm sure there are probably others, where that happened. Now think about that drive you made last week or that walk you made up your street. Think about the person that made you coffee this morning, or your coworker in the cubicle next to you, your brother-in-law, the parent next to you at the school pickup line. Every other one of them that you encounter, most of us think, has bad morals. And here's the strange part, at least for me. We did this while simultaneously living next to these people, working with these people, depending on these people to teach our kids and take care of our cars and deliver our packages. We're convicting them. We're telling them that you have bad morals. And I should share with you that Pew has never asked this question before. So we don't know if this is a new concept. We know that this is what we are. But I'll tell you what I think. And I'll pull this apart over the next few minutes. I think we got sold a story. And I think we bought it. I think the receipt is sitting right there at that 53% mark. I'm going to show you over the next few segments exactly why I believe that. Because I think that we are not looking at the world around us clearly. I think that we are so insular culturally these days that we don't have a sense of who is actually around us and who and their the basis of their morality. I believe that we are so inward. We think so internally these days that we have no idea who the people around us truly are, whether they're good or bad. And we've come to the conclusion that we should fear them because we don't know them. I believe that that is the source, or one of the sources, at least, of our increasingly divisive politics, of our increasingly fractured culture. We don't look at the entirety of the world anymore. We're aware of them, but we don't know them. And that lack of awareness, that lack of experience with the world around us, yet we know it's there, but we don't actually want to interact with it because we are afraid of it. I believe it's led us to some faulty conclusions. Conclusions that I fear the long-term consequences of. We'll talk about some of those in the moments to come. This is the Daily Note Live. I'm James A. Brown. Thanks for being with me. More to come.
Want to talk to James? Leave him a comment on jamesabrown.net. This is the Daily Note.
Welcome back to the Daily Note Live. I'm James A. Brown. Thanks for joining me. If something hits you about what we're talking about today, I want to hear about it. Call me or text me at 585-371-8865. That's 585-371-8865. I listen to every message. I read them all. So we've established a number. 53%. Pew asked us how we felt about our neighbors. And we felt that 53% of them were morally bad. We were the only country in the 25 in this schedule, this study, to come to that conclusion about our neighbors. So I found myself transfixed with this number. How did we come to this conclusion? How did we come to believe this about ourselves? And what does that say about who we are as people, as a nation? Look, I don't expect us all to have a Pollyanna view over who we are as people. People do bad things. We don't all, there's not many Mother Teresas among us. But I didn't expect things to be this bad, this quick. Even with all the divisiveness in our society, I thought that maybe we had a bit more faith in each other. Now, Pew asked people in all 25 countries about 9 specific behaviors. And the different behaviors got different scores. For instance, marijuana. Only 23% of Americans say using marijuana is morally wrong. I bet that number, if we checked it 10 years ago or 20 years ago, maybe 30 years ago, that'd be very different. In most of the other countries Pew surveyed, that number was over 40%. We're in a country with a reputation globally for being judgmental, but not when it comes to pot. In pot, we've evolved, we've changed our stance to be, less how shall I say, focused on how people handle that in their bodies. It's not just on marijuana, on gambling. We're also, we have similar stats there. Only about 29% of us believe that was morally wrong. And that makes sense. I mean, if you watch our media these days, our media is full of gambling ads. You can pull up your phone right now and bet on tonight's game. You know, I'm going to be watching UFC this weekend. And as I do that, I can bet in between rounds. Most of the world looks at that and thinks, what the hell are we doing? Some substances in personal risk, we're libertarians. We don't moralize about what you smoke or that you place your bets. And that's not exactly what I expected, honestly, from a country that just told researchers that its neighbors are morally bad, that 1 out of 2 people we see are morally bad. Because if you think the people around you are terrible, you'd expect to find a country that is harsh about everything. You thought us to be judgmental about everyone and all our actions. And we're not. But we're not that way about everything. There's another one I found very interesting. Affairs. 90% of Americans say that a married person having an affair is morally wrong. That's almost everybody. That's 9 out of 10 people. In a country that can't agree on what day of the week it is, 9 out of 10 of us think that if you cheat on your wife or you cheat on your husband, you're reprehensible. And that got me thinking about Coldplay. You probably remember that CEO that got caught on the Jumbotron in Boston with the HR boss of his company. And then it made me say, okay, I understand now why that was such a big deal. I understand that in America, we care more about sort of commitments and the idea of marriage and family being a solo connection than other nations. I just did not expect this. And look, we're not completely alone on it. We're just on the extreme edge of it. About 77% of people and about a half of the country surveyed felt strongly about this, but it wasn't as strident as we are. So think about what that means. We don't care if you gamble. We don't care if you smoke, but we care deeply about keeping your word on your marriage. Interesting, isn't it? This is a Daily Note. More in a moment.
Want to talk to James? Send him an email at james@thedailynote.net. This is The Daily Note.
Hello and welcome back to the Daily Note Live. I'm James A. Brown. Thanks for joining me. We've been talking about this number that from Pew Research. 53% of Americans say their fellow citizens have bad morals. And we just worked through a few of the moral questions where Americans aren't especially harsh. In fact, we're middle of the pack on some things. In particular, things like pot, things like gambling. These things, we're more permissive than other societies. And what I've been trying to gather is how we came to the conclusion that our neighbors are morally bad when we don't know our neighbors. Many of us couldn't tell each other who our next door neighbors are, what their names are. I don't think we're the bad people we think we are. So let's say I'm right here. You know, let's say just walk with me for a moment. If we don't really know our neighbors, increasingly the data points us in that direction. How do we come to the conclusion that our neighbors are bad? Who sold us on this verdict? How did we get to this point of view? We didn't do it alone. We didn't wake up one morning and start thinking that, hey, that all of our neighbors are morally bad. Someone or something put that in our heads. And I think we are part of that culprit, part of that apparatus that led us in that direction. And here's what the conclusion I came to. I think we've retreated. We pulled back into our social bubbles, our echo chambers, our deep reservoir of tailored content. And the more that we retreat, the more that we become wary of anyone or anything that contradicts what we already believed, we've become increasingly alone. And I don't mean it as a metaphor. I mean literally. Fewer of us are married. Fewer of us are in relationships. Fewer of us belong to a church or a club or a league. Fewer of us know the name of our mechanic. And when you're alone, you lose the thing that used to protect you from bad information about other people, experience, time around them. And when you become absorbed in your own political, social, ethical dogma, and you don't see evidence to the contrary, you can't help but be swallowed by it. You can't help but be captured by the thought, by the ideas, by the feelings that come with being alone, the feelings that come with being angry. If all you see that people around you are doing bad things, and you assume that those people disagree with you politically, socially, they live a different lifestyle than you do, then you become angry. You become wary. You don't want to deal with them. You begin to do some of the things that we have done culturally over the last decade or so. For those of you who listen to the Daily Note often or read the Daily Note on Newsbreak and other places, you probably heard me rant on about how we're reshuffling. And here, for those of you who are new to the concept, I'll explain. We as a culture, go through periods where we become more mobile and less mobile. And we're in this sort of weird interregnum period where through the aughts in the 20 teens, we have moved into pockets, mostly politically driven and some economic. I think, well, both political and economic. Usually those are tied together, but we have moved into these pockets where we're surrounded by people and laws that reflect who we believe we are. So we see this in politics with blue pockets becoming bluer and red pockets becoming redder. So, and take a state like New York, counties are red counties are ruby, ruby red, and blue counties are blue, 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 blue. And there's very few purple people out there left like me, at least not in these worlds. We're going to have our own purple island somewhere. I hope you join me. And I think part of that is this sort of strange, at least to me, belief that that people who disagree with you are morally wrong. Not just they disagree, not just that they've come to a different conclusion, maybe their religion or their personal philosophy is just different from yours. No, that people who disagree with you are amoral or just morally wrong. That they're morally defective. Now, in the Pew data from this study, I think it's most striking when we start to look at Democrats and Republicans. Democrats and people leaning Democratic, so we're talking progressives, liberals, are likely to say that Americans have bad morals than Republicans are. 60% versus 46%. And before anyone makes this purely partisan, Pew found the same pattern in more than half the country surveyed. In country after country, the people whose party are out of power are more likely to say their fellow citizens are morally bad. Now this is terrible logic. And for me, this is one of the most chilling parts of all of this. It makes me concerned for the future of democracy. The fact that we believe that because someone has chosen a different party, because someone has chosen a different kind of outcome for your election, whether it's Donald Trump or Javier Milei or it's Kamala Harris or whoever, that you don't just disagree with the outcome, you start questioning the character of the people who voted differently than you do. That I find terrifying. Because winning or losing an election doesn't change your neighbors. Apparently, it's changing how we see them. I believe this is louder because our media environment amplifies the loss. It turns every political outcome into a moral emergency. Every election isn't just an election. It is the most important election of your lifetime. And look, I'm not saying voting is not important. I mean, if you want to vote, vote all you want. But I'm saying that simply because you vote one way doesn't make you a terrible person. But this is the conclusion we've come to. And I think this is something that we should be very, very wary about as time goes on. Because I feel like this is the kind of thing that can wear on a society. And make an already tense culture even tenser. It's kind of terrifying, honestly, once you think about it. And look, I'm not excusing either side here. This isn't a Republican problem or a Democrat problem. This is an everybody problem because someone is going to lose power at some point unless we end up in a one-side state. And I don't think anybody really wants that. At least I don't. This is the Daily Note. I'm James A. Brown. More in a minute.
Want to talk to James? Leave him a comment on jamesabrown.net. This is the Daily Note.
Welcome back to the Daily Note Live. I'm James A. Brown. Thanks for joining me. You can check out what we're doing at jamesabrown.net. That's jamesabrown.net. So let me try to put all this together because we've been sitting with this number for about an hour now. And I want to make sure we're clear about what we found. Pew Research asked more than 30,000 people in 25 countries a simple question. Do the people in your country have good morals or bad morals? And in 24 of those countries, the answer was sure. In one country, the answer was nah. 53% of American adults say the people around them are morally bad. Pew tested this belief against 9 specific behaviors, and the belief didn't hold up for behavior after behavior. We're among the most morally permissive societies on the planet on substances like drugs and marijuana and gambling. We condemn affairs, but so is almost the entire planet. We don't like it when you cheat on your spouse. We fall in the middle of the pack on just about everything, but about half of us believe the rest of the country is morally bad. So where did that come from? Well, I think it came from a retreat. We have been pulling back from each other culturally. We stopped going to the places where we used to see each other with our own eyes, that most people are decent. And into that vacuum came a machine that makes money on telling us the opposite. A media environment built on the idea that the people on the other side of the screen are not just wrong, but morally corrupt. And we were easy targets because we didn't have any counter evidence anymore. We were isolated. We're not seeing people who are different than us anymore. We didn't run into a neighbor who'd shovel your sidewalk without being asked. We didn't have a stranger at a diner that we saw all the time who, we stopped having moments where we interacted with people who we didn't already know, who we didn't already have established relationships with. And I know some of you are going to say, look, James, people have really gotten worse. Look at these Republicans. Look at these Democrats. Look at all the road rage. Look at the way that people talk to each other online. And look, I think some of that is accurate. Honestly, these are things that I've talked about a lot on this show and on the Daily Note. I think we've seen a degrading of customer service. I think we've seen a degrading of online discourse. I'm not going to tell you your experience is wrong. It's not. We've all been burned by people. We've all watched somebody behave terribly in a parking lot or a comment section. It's all real. And it counts. I've seen it. But here's what I keep coming back to. Those moments are real. Yes, they are very real. But they're not the whole picture. And the data tells us that they're not even the most of the picture that we encounter day to day. If America's really morally bad, or really more morally bad than people in other countries, it'll show up in the other behaviors that Pew Research tested. But it doesn't. There are 25 countries, 9 behaviors, and we're not the worst at anything. We're in the middle, which, it makes sense. Americans are a melting pot by nature. We absorb people from all over the world, and we've come up with our own crazy culture. So if even we as people say that we're about in the middle morally on a slew of different crosstabs, as they say in the polling business. So on individual issues, we say that, hey, that people are morally okay. But when we ask the big question, are we moral? Are the people around us morally good or morally bad? We come up with the conclusion, half of us come up with the conclusions that our neighbors are morally bad. I think it's because we are looking at reality through an unhealthy frame. Because if that frame were healthy, if you discover things that differ from your reality, you adapt your train of thought. Instead, what we have done is we've devolved into a trench warfare that I believe is harmful to who we are and who we can be as a nation. Now, I want to close with something that I'm going to come back to in the weeks ahead, because this Pew data opens a ton of different doors I can walk through and will walk through. Fewer people now say you need to believe in God to be moral. In America, 68% say you don't need God to have good values. That's the record. Now, I'm not saying that's good or bad. I mean, on God, I am a maybe. I used to be an atheist, and now I'm an I don't know. What I'm saying is that this used to be a reflection of a moral vocabulary in this country, a set of ideas that we could agree on, a connective tissue that, hey, at least we know that those people who are unlike me had something that I understand. Now, that vocabulary, that moral vocabulary, is thinning. And when cultures lose a shared vocabulary, much like we've lost shared spaces, something always fills that gap. And I think what fills that gap is fear and anger and suspicion and faulty beliefs. With the assumption that the person next to us in line is morally bad. So here's the question I want to leave you with. And I mean this sincerely. I want you to think about the person in your life that you haven't talked to in a while, the neighbors, you don't know. the family member you've written off, do you actually know who they are morally, how they see the world? Do you actually have an idea of who they are? And I bet that answer is no. If that answer is no, I think you need to start reconsidering the people around you. I think you need to give more of us a chance. So what do you think? Let me know in 3 ways. You can leave a comment on jamesabrown.net. That's jamesabrown.net. You can email me at james@thedailynote.net. Or you can send me a text or a voicemail. Use 585-371-8865. We might have you on the show. This is The Daily Note. I'm James A. Brown. More in a moment.
Slowing down the news.